What is up, down, and sideways, you beautiful individuals? It is another episode of LYON. Eric and Mark here with you for a, I suppose you could say, spicy type of episode. And a lot of people were not shocked at this outcome, and that's not because of what we've seen on the Rift so far, but we are sitting here, all the momentum in the world for G2, all the trash talk, this goofy three-headed dragon that is the LCS, LYON Gaming. They don't even deserve to be in the top four. They beat Team Secret Whales and Furia. Who cares? Obviously inspired in the boys. They took that to heart because they were absolutely locked in on the day against G2, and G2, something felt off. Maybe they went out celebrating after beating T1, I don't know, but this did not look like the same team that just beat down the defending world champs.
And let's be honest and let's give credit where credit is due. A large percentage of that is due credit over to the side of LYON Gaming. And the
100%.
They prepared for this series, the way that they executed on that preparation for the series, you have to give them their credit on that. I think there is absolutely an angle to talk about G2 and their performance and their preparation after the T1 series within these 48 hours. That could be criticized or looked at and would be something that I would want to get into. But for now, I'm going to stick on the positive side, and that is LYON storming on through, getting through the trash talk, and booking themselves a spot on the podium of MSI.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the time you have this NA versus EU at an international event, and it's sloppy, it's messy, you're feeling rough about both teams, you don't feel good about them matching up against the LCK or the LPL. But this was clean from LYON for the most part, especially the team play. All three of these games, they had twice as many or more assists than kills. Everybody was involved. They had creative flanks from both solo laners, some creative early pathing from Inspired, and a lot of the picks just completely caught G2 off guard. They had so much ammunition in what they wanted to do in this series, and that was without anything really crazy in the draft phase throughout the whole series.
It's one of the most miraculous things ever on the international stage. We get to see North America play like they do in North America. They played just like this was week 2, week 3 of the LCS and steamrolled through their opponent. Hey, this looked, you could replace the name tag with Sentinels for all I care, and that's exactly how this series looked, and that is not a very complimentary association for a squad like G2, and especially a squad that was able to topple T1 in their most recent matchup. It's going to be a tough one when you are on the G2 side, but again, looking on that LYON Gaming side and how they played, this is, again, the miracle, the dream. You never see an LCS representative look like they do in the LCS here on the international stage, but this is the performance that you got out of everybody on this LYON roster. I think first off, you got to start with Saint in that first game being the difference maker on that Silas. You talked about heading into the series that he was one of those players that I think would be underrated, that could swing a series like this with the way that he had been in form, and that was the case in that first game. And then you go through the rest of this series, and I think, of course, everybody is stepping up, but you got to be looking at in game 2, Big Dokes on the Gnar in that counter matchup, obviously as well, getting some help by your boy Inspired, coming on through into that top side and making sure that that advantage is going to stick. And then I think in game 3, it's just an overall presence of force from the bottom lane that is able to carry through the power of this series.
Yeah, and we can start to make some montages of Caitlyn's 1 or 2 shotting supports throughout this tournament. Berserker not the only one able to do that. But yeah, I mean, Saint was absolutely incredible throughout this series and has been pretty much this entire tournament and even going back to the playoffs in the LCS. But the confidence that Inspired obviously has, and that was felt throughout the entire rest of this squad. 58-20 in kills across this series, 28-6 in turrets. There were moments, G2 sneaks a Baron, kind of has a semi-comeback in game 3, but for I'm going to say like 90+% of this series, it was LYON with a gold lead and in control on the Rift.
There was maybe 5 minutes of it that I felt like, okay, one of these games is maybe slipping out of hand. Things are getting a little bit more equal, and it gets to a territory where it becomes that real coin flip. And especially when you're talking about Western teams like that in that situation, Lion holds on strong, and they were very dominant throughout this series in the way that they controlled it. And again, man, was inspired happy about this one. And we talked about yesterday, Skumon looking like he was on that absolute breaking point of being tilted throughout the series and how things went. And thankfully that they were able to close it out. I think he carried some of that energy and attitude into this next series, which can be a benefit, can be used to motivate you. But when things go poorly and go wrong at every single turn here from Lion answers onto G2, it was not the environment that you wanted to be in. And someone like Inspired and how things went, I think he's going to be in his head until G2 hits Summoner's Rift again in the LEC.
I mean, a dude like Inspired only makes you feel even more tilted, right? If you're already tilted and then you look over at that smug face waving or anything else. But, I mean, I think this is something, absolutely a learning experience for Skumon, because going back to the T1 series and in this one, you can't visibly be so frustrated, slouching, sighing on camera, looking at teammates. You can't be having that on these high-stakes matches. And yeah, even though they won that T1 series, I felt like he was still not in that form. They won against T1 with Skumon not being nearly at the level that we saw him domestically. That carried over. He was completely danced around by Inspired. This is 75% Lion playing fantastic, clean stuff, but this was by no means still the same G2 we saw in the last couple of series. Skumon already mentioned. Caps got gapped by Saints. Broken Blade was still good, but not nearly to the level that he was against T1.
And I think, again, part of that is on G2 individually and as a collective with that group. But the bigger percentage, the winning part of that, is on Lion and how they prepared and executed on it throughout this series. And that is one of the things that, again, we were concerned about heading towards this 4G2, knowing that, yes, you might have emptied the tank, gone through the full notebook against T1. There's still more games, and it's not like, okay, Lion is exactly comparable to T1. No, of course not. But they are still a real deal threat remaining at this tournament, and you didn't treat them like a real deal threat. The way that you talked about them on stage, the way that you maybe were kind of eating up your own accolades after taking down T1, you lost sight of where you still were at this event and who was still remaining, and Lion made you pay that price. And I think, unfortunately, it's one of those ones where it's going to take a bunch of years, maybe months, whatever it's going to be, but there's going to need to be some time until you're able to look at this MSI positively again. Because, yes, I think there should still be a positive taken away from this event, and especially in that special series against T1. I don't want that ever taken away from EU and from the G2 faithful. But it's going to be tainted, and it's going to be tainted for a while because of how drastic the drop-off is and how painful it is to lose in this fashion to your rival in North America.
Well, now you've got a combined 0-6 when you throw in Carmine Corp and Team Liquid in the elimination and the play-in stage. Definitely NA dominance at this event, at least over Europe. It's job not done, obviously, for Lion. They're right back on the Rift, and you saw Dokla pop into Cage's stream for a little bit talking about their next opponent, Hanwha Life. Sounds like they've been scrimming G2 a lot, have only scrimmed Hanwha once, which is kind of crazy for how long they've been here, but obviously, still, Lion are going to have even bigger underdog status going up against HLE, but I've seen people say it looked like they pushed back against BLG. I know they were swept equally or even more so than Hanwha Life, who did get pretty gapped in that head-to-head.
I think you're truly left in a dire situation when you are grasping at straws like that to go, yes, well, look.
You got to dig deep in the sand to look for something.
It's not the best angle, but it is an angle at the very least that you can take yourself into a series like this, and you will need some of that. I will say at the very least, in comparison to how things went after G2 and T1, LYON isn't talking about their next opponent in the same type of way. So at least they're staying maybe a little more realistic, a little more humble in that regard to set themselves up. The preparation still needs to be on top. It needs to be just the exact same way that you approach and attacked this series. You need to do the exact same thing to a squad like Hanwha Life, which isn't exactly an easier task to do when you are sifting through how these matchups are going to go. And of course, as well, you don't necessarily have the same history here to call on that you do against EU, against a squad like G2. What is it? Dokla is now 5-0 in series against G2. I don't think we're carrying the same type of record into any matchup against the LCK or any matchup into a team that contains players like Zeus and Gumayushi.
They at least have, though, the blueprint that BLG set, and that's fight often, fight early, and force these skirmishes against Hanwha Life to try and make them uncomfortable before they get things settled. That's not necessarily the main play style of LYON, but we did see them implement that in some of these games against G2. So if I get a game win, I'm saying fantastic tournament for LYON across the board.
Yeah, I think for sure. You're already pretty darn excited about this one, and a large part of that is due to the rivalry aspect of EU and NA and getting that one and how things go. But I think if you are able to steal away a game, make this exciting, unbalanced against a squad like Hanwha Life, that would be the cherry on top for me. That would be the extra little bit and would lead you to having, waiter, bring me over that next serving of copium and hopium before the Worlds tournament comes around, feeling good about a squad like LYON.
And feeling good about maybe having a G2 effect where you can raise up an entire region when you bring back the experience that they'll have at least playing against a marquee match against Hanwha Life, and obviously all the best of fives before that. Which, by the way, every win has been a 3-0 for LYON. Just saying.
Yeah, we could take those. And as you laid out, Team Liquid already beat Carmine Corp at this event. So it's not like they're the only North American squad taking over a little dominance over the pond type of situation. And I think when you are, again, looking at this situation for LYON Gaming and with Hanwha Life ahead of them, the one thing, and then you can take it in almost to any series, but especially this one with how you saw that last series for Hanwha Life play out against BLG, the importance of the jungler and how he is able to not only be a difference maker in his individual matchup, but everybody else's matchup and get that into the right state. Someone like Inspired is skilled and good enough to do that against a squad like Hanwha Life and have that be a factor for this LYON Gaming. If that is on the cards, if that's on the table, then I think this is much more of an even fight than it ever would look on paper.
And that BLG HLE series showed us how different Hanwha looks when Kanavi is out of his comfort zone. When he gets put behind early, when he's not able to dictate the pace, they look like a completely different team, and Inspired just finished doing that to Skewmon 3 games in a row.
Yeah, and it's not the one where, like, okay, all of a sudden now we're in this hole and, oh, well, let's, someone brought a ladder and now we're out of it. They were holes that they were unable to escape from within those games against BLG, just off of, one or two little sequences where Kanavi is being set behind. But that was enough, and it was one of these ones where that type of advantage, you can envision someone like Inspired being able to create in a series like this, especially coming off the backs of how crucial he was in this series against G2.
And when they get in that hole, a player like Kanavi is more likely to double down for a crazy play to try and get out of that hole, and obviously things snowballed even worse. So we'll see. Obviously still massive underdog status for LYON Gaming, but we head into that finals weekend over at the Midseason Invitational. That is it today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you. Absolute stunners. Thanks for hanging out as always. We'll catch you on that flippity flip.